Stop staring at me. Hi, welcome to One Eye on the Page. I'm Scott. I've been doing these videos for about a month now, and I've felt comfortable with some of the videos. Some of the recent videos I feel a little bit uncomfortable with just because they grew a whole bunch. I had one that I barely had under 1 hour long, and I'm in the middle of editing one that's going to be more than 45 minutes long. So I thought I should try to do a video that's a little bit shorter. How about I just talk about one book? I could probably do it for an hour, but so I was thinking, well, what book should I talk about? And then I thought about a couple of the videos that I did on the Stephen King five-year battle series. I was talking about insomnia and how the last chapter of Insomnia is probably my most read piece of writing. But what is my most read book? I always had battles internally, real knockout fights about best versus favorite. Many of my favorite books I would not put out there as this is the best book ever. These would be 5 stars for me, but am I going to say this is better than Moby Dick? Hell yeah, it is. Moby Dick sucks. I don't actually know if Moby Dick sucks because I haven't been able to finish it because I don't care about whales that much. That is probably another video I can do is books that I have been unable to finish. Definitely within my top 10 favorite books, and definitely my most read book is Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. Boy's Life is set probably, I think, in the 60s, about a boy named Corey Mackinson. He lives in Alabama, Sefer, Alabama, and he goes out one morning with his father because his father is a milkman. This is the time when milkmen still existed. They see a car go into the lake, and the father tries to go in and rescue the man who is in there, but that man is chained up in there. And so basically, his father sees this man essentially die. And it really impacts his father. And the novel is just, it's like this smorgasbord of everything, maybe not you, but that I could want in a novel. There's a murder mystery, there's a coming of age story, there's light, not romance, infatuation. There's horror, there's tragedy. It even has something I complain about Stephen King all the time is is the magical Negro. This one actually has two, but McCammon just writes it so much better, and it's like, oh, a lot of what makes this one character a magical Negro is just her realizing the trope about herself and kind of steering into it. And the other one is just, he's this handyman. He's not magical in any way. He's just like an expert repairman. He talks so slow, which is interesting to read. Although I gotta say, I have not listened to this book on audiobook. I gotta imagine that has to be an interesting part of the book. There's the nostalgia, something that Stephen King does very well. Uh, McCammon's a little bit younger than Stephen King, so a lot of his stuff is from the 60s, like, whereas King has the birth of rock and roll, sort of, in the 50s that he's most familiar with. McCammon talks about, like, the big song in here is the Beach Boys, I Get Around. And causes a commotion. There's a monkey named Lucifer who ties in very directly with this song. There's revenge tales. There's Western gunfights. There's a kid who is the hardest baseball thrower probably anybody has ever seen. There's redemption. It's almost too much, but I think McCammon does an excellent job of like keeping it all restrained. If you don't like Ray Bradbury and some of the sentimental writing that he does, this is probably not the book for you. McCammon doesn't go as purple, I would say, as Bradbury does. I usually read this book at least every 2 years. I don't think I've read it in the last 3 years or so, just because life has happened, a lot of life, and I'm probably due for another read soon. I mean, not only do I have, the copy I showed you, I have the original one that I purchased. I have this copy that my wife got me several Christmases ago. It's actually autographed. And I have another one that my wife got me for another Christmas. It's a library version one. So I have 4 copies of this book. I also have it on Kindle because I have actually read it while traveling. I can't estimate the number of times that I've read this. When was it published? It was 1991. Okay, so I know I read it pretty soon after it first came pretty soon after it first came out, 1991. Basically, I've had this book 30 years. Probably I've read it 15 times. And it's a coming of age story too. There are 4 boys, because if there's a coming of age tale with a group of boys, for some reason, it always has to be 4. You can see that in Stephen King's The Body. I believe in Dan Simmons' End of Night. I probably have the title wrong there. For some reason, there's 4 boys. McCammon is also a writer that I like. Back when I read more often in the horror field, he was one of the ones that I was an automatic go for. I actually believe I think I read Swan Song first, and then I read Stinger. Swan Song is an apocalyptic novel. It's not my favorite among McCammon's, but it's still very good. Stinger is one of my favorites, not obviously as much as Boy's Life, but that's also a very good read. He has some books that talk about. There's one called Usher's Passing, which obviously has to do uh, with the Edgar Allan Poe book. He has vampire novels. He has Mine, which was not one that I liked too much, and Gone South, which is it's a very good novel. It's just not one that's really called to me. He also has the short story collection Blue World, which contains novella Blue World, which is one of my favorite novellas, and also Night Crawlers, which is probably his best short story. But he has several short stories that are good. He took a break from publishing for a while, and he came back with the Matthew Corbett books, which are set in the 1700s. Basically, almost kind of like murder mysteries, a little bit. I like them, but not as much as some of his earlier work. And he's published other stuff that I've read that's been kind of, quality's been over the place. I think if you like Stephen King, early Stephen King, like 80s Stephen King, like It, Different Seasons, those types of books, you'll like this. If you like coming of age stories, if you like horror stories, although much of the horror in here is realistic. Not to say that the book itself is realistic, because I didn't even mention there's actually a monster in this book, but the monster isn't like anywhere near the main antagonist. You have to read the part about the monster. It's just it's hilarious and scary too. There's a dog. Don't want to tell you too much about that one. But if you've ever owned or loved a dog, this one will get you. It's the type of book for everybody, I think. All right, I'll just read this, kind of give you a little bit of what it's about. A little bit. But Zephyr was a magic place. Spirits walked in the moonlight. They came out of the grassy graveyard and stood on the hill and talked about old times when Coca-Cola really had a bite and you could tell a Democrat from a Republican. I know, I've heard them. The breeze in Zephyr blew through the screens, bringing the incense of honeysuckle and awakening love, and jagged blue lightning crashed down upon the earth and awakened hate. We had windstorms and droughts, and the river that lay alongside my town had the bad habit of flooding. In the spring of my 5th year, a flood brought snakes to the streets. Then hawks came down by the hundreds in a dark tornado and lifted up the snakes in their killing beaks, and the river slinked back to its banks like a whipped dog. Then the sun came out like a trumpet call, and steam swirled up from the blood-specked roofs of my hometown. We had a dark queen who was 106 years old. We had a gunfighter who saved the life of Wyatt Earp at the OK Corral. We had a monster in the river and a secret on the lake. We had a ghost that haunted the road behind the wheel of a black dragster with flames on the hood. We had a Gabriel and a Lucifer and a rebel that rose from the dead. We had an alien invader, a boy with a perfect arm. We had a dinosaur loose on Merchant Street. It was a magic place. In me, there are memories of a boy's life spent in the realm of enchantments. I remember. These are the things I want to tell you. And if that doesn't get you to want to read the book, then you're not going to want to read the book. Just wanted to tell you one of my favorite books. I may do this again. Sometimes my favorites switch. Boy's Life by Robert McCammon is always on my favorites list. Bluebeard by Kurt Vonnegut, which I'm probably the only person who has that Kurt Vonnegut novel as one of their favorites, is on the list. That is it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment, offer any novels that you might want me to read, any genres. I'll talk to you next time.